Good evening. I'm Roberta Jorgensen, Chairperson of the Paso Robles Planning Commission. This is our meeting of February 9th, 2021. Please note that due to the COVID-19 emergency and in compliance with the state and county shelter-at-home orders and as allowed by the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which allows for a deviation of teleconference rules required by the Ralph M. Brown Act, Planning Commission meetings will be held by teleconference only until further notice. A video stream of Planning Commission meeting presentations will be live streamed and available to play later on YouTube by accessing the following link, www.prcity.com/YouTube. Rather than attending in person, project applicants and members of the public must call 805-865-7276 to participate via phone. The phone line will open just prior to the start of the meeting at 6:30 p.m. Or written public comments may be submitted via email to planning@prcity.com. Written comments received prior to 12 noon on the day of the meeting will be posted as an addendum to the agenda online at www.prcity.com/agenda center/planning-commission-5. If submitting written comments in advance of the meeting, please note the agenda item. So I will call this meeting to order. And Commissioner Gibson, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Castillo?
Here.
Commissioner Christensen?
Present.
Commissioner Davis?
Here.
Commissioner Gibson?
Here.
Commissioner Neal?
Here.
Commissioner Kogler?
Here.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. May we have staff introductions, please?
Yeah, Warren Frace, Community Development Director. With me tonight is Darren Nash, our City Planner, Katie Bannister, our Assistant Planner, and Jessica Ferguson is our Admin Assistant doing our IT support tonight.
All right, thank you.
Randy Harris, Fire Marshal.
Oh.
Randy Harris, Battalion Chief Fire Marshal on the line as well.
And Brian Cowan, Building Official.
And Julie Dolan, Community Services Director.
All right. Thank you, staff. So at this time, we have general public comments regarding matters not on the agenda. I do not believe we have any callers in the queue. So I will ask staff if there are any agenda items proposed to be tabled or rescheduled.
There are none.
All right, thank you. So let's proceed to our public hearings. Agenda item number 1 is Conditional Use Permit 21-11 for the reestablishment of a non-conforming setback P21-0004 at 2145 Olive Street. May we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Chairperson Jorgensen. This is Katie Bannister, Assistant Planner. So as you stated, this is a conditional use permit. This is to reestablish a single-family residence that has been demolished. It had a pre-existing non-conforming setback, and they'd like to rebuild in that same location. Turn this on. There we go. Okay, so for location, this is 2145 Olive Street. Olive Street on the west side of the city. So 22nd Street goes up past Vine up to Olive, and then Olive Street actually doesn't go through at this part of town. So it's kind of a little insular little neighborhood. There's a creek to the north and a slope to the south, and so you've got just a 2-block area that forms a little neighborhood. Just so happens the property owner does own the lot that is behind the subject property that fronts on Villa Lane. So a little bit of project history. In 2020, the property owner applied for some building permits from the city. They were to, number one, to remodel the existing house and to add a sunroom to the front of the house. The proposed addition was outside of all the required setbacks. And then, of course, the remodel was just of the existing space. The existing space did include a non-conforming setback. The way the municipal code works is that you can certainly do maintenance and even remodel non-conforming space, but we don't generally allow new spaces to be put into the setbacks. In addition, the applicant had applied to convert a portion of an existing garage, kind of garage carport structure, into an accessory dwelling unit. The building permits for both of these were issued on October the 13th of last year. There were several building inspections that occurred between October 17th and October 30th. And on December 1st, the city building inspector went out for a site visit and observed that the buildings had been demolished, which exceeded what the scope of the building permits that had been issued. So here is a site plan. This is both what was previously existing on the site and what the applicant is proposing. So you can see the residence towards the front of the property and then the accessory dwelling unit back towards the rear. The swimming pool was not affected by any of the proposed changes, nor was it demolished. It's still existing. When the new site plan was presented to the city, it became aware that the side setback did not meet the required side setback. So in the R1 district, you are required to have a 5-foot side setback in this location. So as you can see, that side setback there is 3 feet and 10 inches. So the applicant is requesting to be able to put that building back in the exact same location. This is an aerial of the site. So this is prior to the demolition. You can see the house and the garage in the rear. Some portion of that garage building had been removed before the city became involved. So as you can see, that building had extended over the property line. I don't believe that the current owner had anything to do with that building. So anyway, a little bit of commentary there. But so as you can see, 2145, the primary residence was very close to the side property line, pre-existing. The neighbor to the north also had or has a non-conforming detached accessory building there that's pretty close to the property line. So as for reestablishing of a non-conforming setback, so as I stated, generally you can do maintenance and make changes to non-conforming spaces, but when a non-conforming building is damaged or removed, the code says that they have to be rebuilt to conform to the present code. And as I stated, that would require a 5-foot side setback. There is an exception that can be made, and it really is only applicable to single-family residences. And it would, subject to the approval of a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission can approve restoration to the previous state of nonconformity. But the Planning Commission does need to find that it would not have a significant adverse effect on public safety or the existing or planned visual character of the neighborhood. So this is an image of the demolished residence. I believe it was a house built in the 1940s. Another image. These are Google Street View images, so they're from a few years ago. This is the present site condition. You can see the house has been removed. Both buildings have been removed. And if you see in the top right corner that the footings for the new building have already been formed. And this is a large part of why the applicant is requesting to reestablish the non-conforming setback. They did form up the stem walls for the foundation, and that was a large expense for them. And so having to move the building now a few feet, I believe it's 1 foot and 2 inches, would be a large expense to have to move those footings. These are some neighborhood pictures. There's some additional pictures in the staff report that the Planning Commission received, but this is the house immediately to the south. The more I look at this picture, the less I'm convinced that that's a non-conforming setback. It's probably pretty close to 5. I thought it was maybe more like 3 or 4 feet. It's hard to tell. I didn't go out with a tape measure, but certainly the neighbor to the north has a non-conforming detached garage that's either right on the property line or less than a foot off the property line. So it's quite close to the property line. These pictures and the pictures in the staff report were meant to establish that there really is a kind of a neighborhood precedent, that on the west side, we've got a lot of historic structures, and the setbacks weren't always observed over the years. And so allowing a non-conforming setback here, it will have a relatively minor effect on this neighborhood. This is reestablishing a visual character that has been there for many years and does exist other places in the neighborhood. So in addition, the driveways for new single-family residences, driveways are meant to have a driveway that's at least 12 feet wide. The applicant is proposing to reestablish their 10-foot driveway. Driveway exceptions can actually be approved by the Development Review Committee, but we're bringing it for you, bringing it to the whole Planning Commission today to just wrap it up with the other setback exception. The Development Review Committee can grant exceptions, but the project is subject to any mitigation measures necessary to assure adequate fire protection. The fire marshal is with us here this evening, and if you have any questions as to his he's also recommending the approval of this conditional use permit. The new structures will be sprinklered buildings, and he feels that mitigates the fire risk of the proposed non-conforming setback. So this project is exempt from CEQA. There's a number of exemptions that can apply and do apply to this project. A Class 2 exemption to replace an existing structure. A Class 3 applies for the construction of new small structures. And a Class 5 exception is for minor alterations in land use, which would include allowing a non-conforming setback. There are some draft conditions included in the draft resolution. One would not allow anything narrower than a 10-foot driveway width. When I went out to the site, the driveway pavement had been removed. I believe the applicant intends to replace that, but there's a condition in the resolution just to ensure that it does get a permanent surface. It does require that if the applicant ever wanted to do additions to the primary residence that would include a second story, that second story would have to be 10 feet, so it would have to be set back from the proposed side of the building. And then the color and materials of the primary and accessory dwelling unit are conditioned to be of matching color and material. So the Planning Commission, as always, the resolution includes kind of a laundry list of findings to be made, but the most important are that the restoration would not have a significant adverse effect on public safety or the existing or planned visual character of the neighborhood, and also that the driveway width exception is mitigated by the installation of fire sprinklers in the new residences. The Planning Commission has options. The first is to approve the draft resolution as it has been drafted, which would allow the reestablishment of a non-conforming setback. The Planning Commission could also amend and adopt the draft resolution. You could refer the project back to staff, or you could deny the draft resolution if you feel that the findings cannot be made for this project. Staff. Oh, there we are. So staff does recommend the first option, that you adopt draft resolution A. We do have the fire marshal and the city building official with us this evening. So if you have questions pertaining to the building code or any other fire life safety issues, they'll be here to help us with those. And I believe that is the end. Yeah, that's just another image of the site plan. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Can you hear me? I'm trying something different with my audio.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right, so let's go around to the commissioners for questions of staff. Commissioner Kogler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one. I was on DRC, so I have seen this before. Katie, the question I have relates to finding number 1 that you had on a slide, which is pulled from Code Section 21.20.350. And that is it identifies under the exception kind of the yardsticks that we have to measure this against. And one of those is the effect on public safety, which is one I think we can do this evening. The other is the existing visual character of the neighborhood. I think we probably all in the field had a chance to assess that. But the other is the planned visual character of the neighborhood. And I'm wondering if any plan exists or any kind of guidelines are out there by which we can take a look at this as one of the criteria.
So we don't have like design standards for the R1 district. Certainly the planned visual character would include 5-foot setbacks to some degree. That is sort of, the setbacks have been set at that distance and that's the intention. But I think that that has also to do with safety. And so whether or not that's a planned visual character, but we don't have like a design manual for the R1 district.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you. I really only have one question. I appreciate the fire marshal's comments that the sprinklers would mitigate the safety issues and the fire issues. Katie, I know there's a ADU and I don't know, I didn't really see anything in parking. I don't think parking changes with this development or this CUP. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's the way the new state law works for accessory dwelling units. There's a couple of exceptions that probably apply to this project, but I think the one that we're applying here, if a new ADU is located within 1/2 of a mile walking distance from a transit stop, the city actually cannot require the ADU to provide on-site parking. So this project is within a 1/2 mile of a transit stop along Spring Street. So, there is room in the driveway for parking, and there is a carport proposed that would have 2 covered parking spaces for the primary residence, but the city actually cannot require additional parking for the new ADU.
That was my understanding. And I did see that various neighbors signed a letter of support. Were there any other comments submitted to the city?
No, we have not received any.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Commissioner Neal.
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Castillo.
No questions at this time, Madam Chair.
All right, Commissioner Christensen.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I guess one of the questions I had, and it's not really pertinent to this that I can think of, but I was just curious, was there any issue with the historical age of the home or style design with the home at the time that they originally applied for permits, Katie?
So this house was not on our historic resource inventory, no.
Okay. All right. And then as for the existing driveway, so 10 feet would be an exception. Is that correct?
Yes, 12 feet is the requirement. The previous non-conforming driveway was 10 feet wide, and they are requesting 10 feet.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Gibson.
I had the opportunity to see this at DRC and have my questions answered at that time, so I have no further questions. Thanks.
Okay, and I do not have any further questions either. So I will open the public hearing, and I do not see that we have any callers.
The applicant is on the phone.
All right, if the applicant would like to speak, please state your name and your address and go ahead.
Well, hi, everybody. Lori Marquez, owner of 2145 Olive Street, but I'm obviously renting right now while we get this project up and running so that we can move in. My husband Axel and I purchased this home. Well, we fell in love with it in November, and I guess it closed in February. We knew we were going to have, some work to do on the house because, it had old style electrical, which doesn't really support our modern lifestyle. So I knew we were going to have work to do there. We knew we had some interior work to do. We were going to kind of move some walls around. We had no idea what we were in for. We worked with JK Engineering to put together, our architectural and structural engineering plans. We applied for our permits. At that time, we were instructed to apply for separate permits for the main residence as well as the ADU. So we did that. We received the issued permits on October 13th. So we started doing our demolition and determined that one of the conditions for our permit was that we do a rebar scan to verify that our foundation was solid. It was determined it was not. We found it was like only parts of it had 12 inches in depth. Part of the foundation was on top of an old brick foundation. We determined there was no reinforcement throughout. So, our project sadly became bigger. We worked with JK to revise the plans. So we got new calculations for the foundation. We worked with our contractors to get the rebar for all the footings per those newly engineered drawings. We called for an inspection and were approved to move forward with pouring the footings. That's when our contractors framed the stem walls. When we called for our second inspection, that's when we were told, we're now subjected to, we're not a remodel and we're subjected to these new home rules. So this put us in a nightmare. I don't honestly know what we could have done differently. It was always our intention to reuse as much as we could on the home. And I really don't know how we could have prevented from getting into the situation that we're in at this point. So we are hopeful that the council will support us in allowing us to move forward with constructing this home in its original footprint. We didn't change any of the floor plan. We were looking to do it exactly on this footprint. We were not thinking we were doing a new home. So we're definitely kind of behind the 8 ball financially, and we would love to get moving with this project. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. I don't see that we have any other callers, so I will close the public hearing. And I'll bring this back to the commission for any further discussion, and I will go around again. Commissioner Kobler, any discussion?
No, Madam Chair, nothing further.
Commissioner Davis?
No, I really don't have any further questions. I think this project would really add to the aesthetics of the neighborhood. I am inclined to support it tonight.
Commissioner Neal?
No further questions, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Castillo?
No further questions, Madam Chair.
All right, Commissioner Christensen?
I just wanted to comment and say, for someone that lives in a 1940 home, I can feel your pain. So I understand kind of maybe what you're dealing with. I walked the neighborhood. I did too walk the site. I think that having this completed is going to fit right in with the neighborhood. And so I would look forward to them getting it completed. I don't have any other questions or anything at this time. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Gibson, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I commented at the DRC that I was glad that I had the time to go see this project before our DRC meeting because it kind of changed my initial opinion from reading it to actually seeing it. And I have no problem with this project moving forward. I drove through the neighborhood and it seemed like pretty much half or more of the houses on the west side of that whole street, the whole length of that short street, are in similar condition, being very close to the lot line. It's almost like a zero lot line development. So, and I just feel for the applicant that you buy a house and think you're going to do a remodel and then you have to tear it down. And then, the story was just like kind of heart wrenching. So hopefully we can help end some of that saga and help push this forward tonight.
All right, thank you. So I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
this is Commissioner Neal.
Commissioner Neal?
Yes, I move to adopt adopt draft resolution A, approving conditional use permit 21-11 based on findings and subject to site-specific conditions of approval.
I'll second the motion. This is Commissioner Gibson.
All right, so the motion by Commissioner Neal and seconded by Commissioner Gibson. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a question. I just want to make sure that we're not missing a number. Is it 20-11 or 21-11?
The conditional use permit is 21-11. Is it misprinted somewhere?
Or did I misspeak?
I'm not sure. I just wanted to make sure we got the numbers right. I see something on the staff report and then under the options. So I just want to make sure we had the right number in there.
On the handout, the printed handout, it says 2011, but on the screen, it says 2111.
Correct.
All right, so we're clear? 21-11? All right, hearing no further discussion, I will call for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Neal.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo.
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everyone. So we will move on to discussion items. This is informational update, city homeless services programs and policy. So, city staff?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of months ago, the Planning Commission asked for a report on city homeless programs and policies. So we have Julie Dolland tonight, our Community Services Director, who also basically oversees some of the homeless programs within the city. And then we also have Wendy Lewis, the Executive Director from the El Camino Homeless Organization, also known as ECHO, that has a contract to operate the Motel 6 Next Step, or Homeless Key, I think, program. So we've invited both of them to come tonight and make a presentation, and then they're available for any questions that the commission may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thank you, Warren. And thank you all for inviting us to present this evening. Just a very brief introduction before Wendy Lewis gives her presentation on behalf of ECHO. You all recall, I'm sure, that the city had intended to construct its own emergency warming shelter and homeless services center, courtesy of a homeless emergency aid program grant, the HEAP grant. For a variety of reasons, we needed to abandon that plan, most of them financial. We were rapidly over budget once we really started penciling out what was going to be required for the site at Sulphur Springs. And then when we were directed by Caltrans, and rightly so, that we needed to construct a pedestrian path for safety, that doubled our expense right out the gate. And so we, as I said, had to abandon that plan. And at the same time, courtesy of a state grant, the Project Home Key grant, ECHO collaborated with People's Self Help Housing and the Housing Authority of San Luis Obispo to apply for funds to purchase the Motel 6 in Paso Robles and to convert that into a combination of emergency shelter rooms and low-cost housing. So we are very grateful of certainly of the timing of all of this, but most definitely of the effort involved in securing that grant and already starting programming there. So with that brief introduction, I will turn the stage over, if you will, to Wendy Lewis to provide an update on what is happening at that site. So Wendy, please take it away.
Is Wendy on mute?
apologize. I thought you guys had me muted, and I had me muted. So thank you for the opportunity to the commissioner and city staff. We are really grateful to be able to update and just answer questions. We have just seen an amazing program happening within 2 months of actually securing the facility. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll jump right in. So a little bit about our organization, El Camino Homeless Organization, known as ECHO. This is our 20th anniversary. We really started out as a very grassroots organization 20 years ago that just started to feed folks in Atascadero that were experiencing hunger and homelessness. And as the need shifted over the 20 years from serving kind of a very chronic population to then changes in other people's situations and now serving families and seniors and veterans, the whole system of homelessness has changed in those 20 years. And ECHO as an organization has proudly grown with the need to really help to meet unmet needs. About a year ago, we had one physical location that could accommodate 50 people. And today we have 3 facilities that can accommodate up to 140 people, growing our staff from 6 to 20 to accomplish all of what we'll see tonight. So it has been a whirlwind of a year, but it's amazingly going really well. When we speak of our organization now, originally we were going to have the Sulphur Springs project be the first step homeless facility. And as we transitioned the program into what became Home Key, our partnership with Haslo and People Self-Help Housing, it made more sense at that time to look at El Camino Homeless Organization as the parent organization for now what we're calling ECHO Atascadero and ECHO Paso Robles. So what was the Motel 6, our portion that we operate is now called ECHO Paso Robles, and that's the emergency shelter program piece of the total project. The project received final deed to the building on December 2nd, and you can see within 5 days, ECHO was housing people. So we had a game plan in place. We knew the need was critical to get people out of the inclement weather into what was now going to be their first step into receiving services. So we can go one ahead, Warren. So here's some data in the first 2 months. So we began sheltering people in early November. We did do a pilot program when the motel was still operating in October. So we were really able to learn a lot about the systems that needed to be in place. Keeping in mind, we had only been able to see the exterior of the building the entire time because of the purchase situation. We got to see in one room and the exterior. So renting rooms in October really gave us some more insight to really have the things we needed to do have in place when we opened. So in December, we actually sheltered 86 unduplicated people and 21 children. The children piece was a bit of a surprise. In our meal program that we were operating with Paso Cares, we didn't see a lot of children. And in our outreach programs, we didn't see a lot of children. So we really look at that as some people that were potentially in an unsafe situation that chose staying in that situation to keep their children housed. And when there was an option, they took the option to now have a safer place to be. In January, we started increasing our rooms, keeping in mind we have 42 total rooms that can be used for shelter. And we didn't want to just open all 42 in our initial first few weeks. We wanted to phase up to. We hit all of our benchmarks and actually exceeded them. And we opened all of our 42 rooms with the exception of 2 that we have to keep for isolation in case somebody is symptomatic with COVID. So I'm proud to say we're operating as many rooms as possible to provide shelter to the community. And you can see in January, we saw 105 unduplicated people and 11 children. The decrease in children is we found that Echo Paso Robles is still it's operating from in the evening to the morning. And families with children, that's not the ideal situation. Having shelter is better than having none, but we were actually able to move a few of the families into the Echo Atascadero program, which operates 24 hours a day and has even more wraparound services. So we're actually seeing what we would hope we had seen ahead of time, that we can move people, get them resources, learn more about their situation, and then move them into a program-based situation, and then ultimately housing. So we can also look at the numbers of how many we're serving. We provided a total in January of 903 safe bed nights. So that is that 115 unduplicated. That's how many nights of stay they were able to participate in. So we can go forward to the next slide. We can go forward to the next slide.
Did you want the food or program slide?
Whatever was right after the next one, and I apologize. I am right now at my computer, and my computer is trying to do a scan, and it's blocking my what you have on the screen. So I have a paper copy just as a backup.
So we have the food slide up right now.
Okay, perfect. So the food program that was operated on 24th and Spring, that operated through the end of January. Paso Cares and Echo were still in partnership to provide that. As of February 1st, that has changed, and the program has fully transitioned to Echo, and it was moved over to the site. That was a mutual decision between us and Paso Cares. The move has led to an even better program just because of the ability to space out picnic tables and have a really COVID-friendly but still sit-down dinner. And that transition has really made it easier on the people we serve because of not having to move from the site and walk over to the facility. So what happens every evening now is everybody comes on site, but they're welcome to come on site at 4:30. The meal program is open to anybody, not necessarily having to stay with us, but anybody experiencing homelessness and hunger. Folks that are needing shelter do a quick intake process with our case managers and get on a list for shelter. We have unfortunately had to turn some folks down when more people are asking than we have rooms for. Everybody receives a meal. Those meals continue to be brought by the incredible public. Most of the meals are brought in every evening. It's amazing to see the different groups that show up at about 4 o'clock and bring enough food to feed up to 80 people. And right now, including water bottles, because of COVID, we didn't want to have a water station. We needed it to be something that people weren't hands-on. You can see in January, meals served to the population was almost about 1,350. That shows the dramatic need for that meal. What else happens in that time frame is really those connections between staff and people that are looking for services and expanding on conversations about what resources exist that can really help them get out of homelessness and back into housing. So we can go forward again, Morton.
Okay, we're now on the program slide.
Wonderful. So the programs, in just a few months that we've been able to bring on, I've been very proud of our team. We have many others that we want to implement, but We've already connected with Transitions Mental Health. So we'll be bringing in some mental health support services. That includes their mobile mental health van that will come once a week and be on site during the evening from 4 to 6 hours to connect with people, and including in bringing out a psych tech evaluator, which can then prescribe and really get people the services they need. We'll be bringing medical and dental providers onto the site. We already have great conversations going with them. Some job training and employment placement. We're very excited about those because we all know employment is one of the key factors into getting back into housing. And then the permanent housing assistance, which we're really excited about. Haslo, it will be opening up the wait list for the permanent housing site on February 16th, and we'll be starting to house people in their portion in early March. So that's about a 60 room or 60 housing units that will be coming online in the community. And we're really excited about that. So we can go to the next slide, Warren.
Okay, the community slide is up.
Wonderful. So the community has done exactly what I anticipated they would do. They, right when we had our foundation, which was the actual facility, any need or anything we've messaged out, the community of Paso Robles has just really been incredible. From partnering with the County Office of Education and bringing bilingual book bags out for the children. We're partnering with the Rotary, and they have done just some amazing projects for us. Donated sheds, donated sink, donated any need we've had. The Rotary is going, we'll figure it out. So we're just excited about expanding those type of relationships. We had some deliveries from Templeton School District. They had some excess water and Gatorade. And then the part that really was, I think the most heartwarming part was during the holidays when we had over 20 children. We really wanted to make sure to provide what felt like a holiday and a Christmas for them. And we messaged that out. And in some of the pictures, you'll see we were able to provide wish list items for all of the children. We had, a Christmas Eve, we had a tree, and it just felt really great to be able to provide that to those kids that probably would have had nothing. And that was because we were there and the community stepped up. We're just can't wait for more partnerships as our programs grow and really connecting more to the community of Paso. We've also been doing a lot of outreach to the community as well as our neighbors, and continue conversations with our friends at the Chamber and the Fair Board and Travel Paso, really to make sure folks have a good understanding of what we do. And we've had several of the folks out for tours as well so that they can see it and hear it from us. We can go to the next slide.
Final slide.
Yeah, and so there you'll see the picture of the Christmas Eve and what was taking place, and some things that we are looking at going forward is one of the challenges we found is actually having 42 independent rooms. That is opening up 42 mini shelters every evening and having multiple points of entry. So long-term, with some of the funding that we're looking at, we're really looking to, at one point, build exterior walls and create one point of entry. We think that that'll, one, be more efficient, but then also will create an even safer environment. So that's something that at one point, we'll come back with more information to the Planning Commission. And then another just report that I've been really proud about is we did have some community concern, and that bringing our program to that area would increase fire and police calls. And we, in our 2 months, or almost 2.5 months, we've only had fire out once, and that was for something in a dryer that we didn't realize we inherited from the Motel 6. And then I believe only one call for the police, and that was a mental health call. And she's well known in the community, and really the situation she would have would have happened anywhere in the community. So we're really running a great, safe program and really getting people the resources they need. So that's my presentation. Happy to answer questions and give you any more information that would be helpful.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Staff, are there any more comments or discussion from staff before we go to the commissioners?
No more comments. However, I'm also happy to answer any questions from the city's perspective, if there are any, regarding homeless services for Paso Robles. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, well, commissioners, let's go around in our usual manner for questions, and we'll start with Commissioner Kogler.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, compliments certainly to you, Wendy and Julie, for the job you guys have done. You've seemingly overcome about every obstacle that's been put in front of you, and it's really gratifying to see this up and running in this manner. Just a few pretty straightforward questions, I guess. I've never heard the term unduplicated adults or unduplicated children. What does that mean?
That means that, so that 115 was 115 different people. So we saw 115 different people stay in the shelter. That larger number, that was 900, that means how many times those 115, depending on who we were able to provide shelter, they stayed over 900 times with us. So I hope that's clearer. It's a hard term. It's a term that we use in homeless services, but just think of those as each number is an individual, either adult or child.
Thank you. That makes sense. I guess the other thing I'm curious about, my understanding is that I think you mentioned 46 rooms for shelter with maybe a couple in reserve. My understanding is that's about half of the total unit count there or something like that. And the other half is for, I'll use the term longer term housing. I don't think that's necessarily quite the right term. But can you talk a little bit about the other side of the usage of this building as well?
Yeah, I'll speak as much as I probably can for our partners. That's really the Housing Authority of SLO County is going to operate that permanent housing program. And it is really a unique combination to have shelter and permanent housing in one project. We all see it as really a big asset to the community because a lot of times with the population we serve, there's not that next step. There's not the affordable housing or a place we can find for them. So the HASLO portion will be about 60 units of permanent housing. So we would make referrals to them. We would help our clients fill out applications, get on the waiting list, and they would have an option to move into that programming. So that is a low income permanent housing, supportive housing project. So I can give you an example of a client we would have. If we had a referral to them, our client, whatever income level they have, they only have to have 30% of their income for rent in that long-term housing. So it's an offset process, which really makes it a place for folks to go.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about the operation of the rooms that ECHO has. You have 46 rooms. Do those turn over every night, or are individuals allowed to stay there for a minimum or a maximum amount of time? How does all that work?
So currently, we actually have, so out of the total rooms that we received are in our portion, and we're in the back portion of what was Motel 6. So if you've ever driven in there, there were actually two kind of connecting buildings, and that's ECHO Paso Robles, and it actually worked out really well. So we received a total amount of rooms, but the ones we set aside for shelter is 42. We have 40 online right now. 2 are set aside for COVID isolation. So how it works right now is somebody comes to the intake and during our dinner program, and basically we have to prioritize right now because of the funding stream. Anybody who is a family with children or somebody is in the 65 category and older susceptible of COVID. So we prioritize based on our funding, and then everybody else is put in a lottery if we're going to have more people than we have rooms for. So they actually have dinner, and then folks that are not staying with us just leave the property. And we have staff that kind of does a walk around to make sure that happens. And then somebody who's getting shelter, we check them in almost like at the motel, because right now we have the 42 doors, and that person's responsible for setting up their room in the morning. Everybody's responsible for cleaning their room, changing out the linens. And then that next night they come back to hopefully have a room again. We are starting to look at, now that we've had a couple months under our belt, starting to look at having some rooms be for like a family that we know that we're going to have in with us for a couple months, so we don't have to change out the situation. It makes it better on them and easier on us, but we have to ease into that type of programming as we get kind of our feet underground, make sure we're doing it right.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, that's all my questions at this point in time. I do have a larger scale question about how this fits into the context of all the homeless services in the community and or facilities. And so I'd like to maybe return to that later, but allow the comments to continue on this specific topic, if I may. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Davis.
Hi, Wendy, this is Sherry Davis. I just want to thank you and your organization for all that you're doing. I really appreciate the presentation tonight. You know, people talk in the community, but to just hear straight from you what exactly you're doing in your programming is so valuable. One of the things that went through my mind, a question that I have just because I'm a teacher, and it does kind of refer to what Mark was talking about, the collaboration with other services. But for example, a Cuesta student or Cal Poly student who maybe needs some housing, is that a part of your program?
So it was a Cuesta student that is unhoused?
Yeah, if there's a Cuesta or a Cal Poly student, do you work in collaboration with some other organizations and other food pantries? I know both Cuesta and Cal Poly have food pantries to feed people, but on the housing side, are you seeing that that need for young adults?
Yeah, you're actually bringing me back to what in my old role, I was actually at the food bank as the operations officer and was worked with Cal Poly and Cuesta to set up those pantries at their locations. So yeah, food and access, especially to folks that need it, is just part of what we do. And we do work really closely with Cal Poly and Cuesta, not only to house folks that are unhoused, but also for volunteer service. We have about 9 staff at each location, and to do what we do, we rely heavily on volunteers, including from the colleges and the community. So that's a piece that, for you guys to know is volunteers really help us operate smoothly and safely, and both we work with Cal Poly and Cuesta for housing and for services and volunteer time. That's the part that I'm really excited about, is expanding those partnerships. One thing that I think we do really well is we collaborate, and we've really made great partnerships with many organizations, and they're ready to come on board. We're just phasing that in. So we're in communication with the food bank to potentially have a pantry on site. Again, our meal program will be open to even the permanent housing folks, because we know food insecurity. If we can save them, $5 for a meal they would have produced, that's more money they can save for even longer term housing down the road. So very collaborative, and we really pride ourselves that we have a lot of those connections already, and we're just ready to bring them to the project.
All right, thank you. One other thing, I think I heard you say in your presentation that at some point you might transfer someone from here to Atascadero because of expanded services in Atascadero. So is there sometimes a relocation of our homeless residents? Is that what you see happening?
It's a relocation. It's really a temporary place for them to be, that in the resource that fits their needs the best. So most of the time when someone stays, like if they're physically from Paso, but they're a better program fit for Echo Atascadero, most of the time our housing specialists and our case managers really work to get them back to the community they're from, because it not only if it's children, you're in the same school district you're used to. So we really try our best. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, but it's always kind of a wash. It goes back and forth. It's not that every Atascadero person we serve, we might find somebody who fits in Paso down the road, but it ends up being kind of a wash. It's not relocating, it's just finding the right resource, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. I'll let my fellow commissioners ask some more questions. Thank you again.
Okay, Commissioner Neal, do you have questions?
I do not, but I just would like to thank Julie and Wendy for taking the time this evening, providing information that we can pass on and maybe help the community understand our homeless issues. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Commissioner Castillo.
Unmuted.
We're having trouble hearing you, Leo. You're cutting out. I'm going to move on to Commissioner Christensen. We're having some technical audio problems with yours, Leo. We'll try you back again. Commissioner Christensen.
Thank you. I do want to just echo some of my. Go ahead, Leo. Can we hear Leo?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ty.
Okay, thanks. I just want to echo what my fellow commissioners have said. I want to just praise what they've done down there. I do have to say that it's exceeded what I expected, and I'm happy to hear that they're having good success with it. I did have a question. Maybe Wendy might be able to answer it. You mentioned coming back for separation walls or something to that effect. You find that on-site security is an issue, or sounds to me like it's not, according to the lack of need for calling any of the police force here locally.
Sorry, I think I got muted again. When the project first opened up, our partners with Haslo, they really wanted us to bring security on, not necessarily for our program, but they were concerned that they would have 60 units that were unoccupied and not a lot of activity, and they were afraid someone would actually move in. So we had security for 24 hours a day for about the first month, and we found that they really weren't doing security as in, safety wise. It was more traffic control, because people were learning that it wasn't a motel any longer, and that directing them to where our program was. So we're going to continue with security until the Haslo units are filled, but we've already shifted to they're only in overnight, and really not needing them for our portion. We have staff there that are overnight that support volunteers. And so our staff kind of monitor. We're in the process working with our partners to add security cameras to the facility. So long-term security, I don't think is going to be needed. And I invite anybody out, if you want to come for a tour or just to see it, I would highly suggest during the mealtime, because you really can really feel what it feels like. When I was there last, I had more people tell me thank you, because I was in my Echo shirt than you can imagine. They're just, people really are grateful for the resources. And for the most part, when there is an incident, it really has a mental health piece underlying. So that's a big need of the community. That's a bigger discussion.
Sure, I can appreciate that. I can see how maybe security is more or less just needed for protection of the people that are there from outside influence. Is there, I don't remember, I mean, is there fencing there now around the facility? Or is that something that would maybe, you're talking about a one controlled entry, that would make a lot of sense if you could manage that portion of it.
Yeah, so that's part of the construction pieces that we are doing, working with our partners. Right now, there's a very low fence that's around the entire project, and I believe they recently got approved for, I forget the amount of height, but I think it's 12 feet. So it would be decreased activity coming through some of the inadequate fencing. So definitely looking at that and creating that point of entry.
So what is it that would help now with that? Is there something that would really help other than maybe, walls that could be done more immediately that would help make that process go quicker? Is there something that could be done for that?
It's really just based on the funding and the type of funding. I believe that portion of the funding has to be spent by June 31st of 2021 this year. So it's really that process to get support through getting permits. But I believe the fencing was already approved, and I think it's already in the works in the next month or two, working with our partners. So it hasn't been such a critical issue, but long term, I think it's definitely a need.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like Commissioner Kogler has something to say, so I'll yield my time to him here. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Appreciate it.
Just a quick comment. Staff, Commissioner Gibson and I were involved in the DRC review of the fencing, and there's an 8-foot fence that was approved around a lot of the perimeter of the site, and then there are some 6-foot gate fences that are internal to the project. There was what I think DRC felt was a very well thought out fencing plan that ultimately will require some separation among the uses in there, and I think better control the entrances. So that is in the mill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Gibson. I appreciate that update. And the reason I bring that up is because hearing that there are so many kids there, I think that sounds like it's something that's more of immediate use. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I'm done.
One portion I didn't mention that I think might be helpful is actually in the picture that's up, there's 2 gentlemen, those are on staff, and the building right behind them is actually the family portion. We're able to kind of segregate the families in one area of the facility, so that helps with some of that safety. And as an organization long term, when I talked about removing the doors and having the exterior walkways, the family rooms wouldn't have they would have a door. So we're always utmost safety wise, especially for the children. So we're definitely talking through all of those pieces as well.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gibson, do you have questions?
Not so much questions, but comments. Just to concur with Commissioner Kogler, yes, the fence came before DRC a week or 2 ago, and he was accurate in his description. They needed that in order to move forward on some of the construction, and we had a chance to answer our questions and have them explain to us about the separation between the 2 basic goals and programs. So yeah, it was an 8-foot fence. I appreciate, Wendy, I appreciate you taking the time to come and tell us about this, as well as you and Julie. I'm happy to see that there's something being done about some of the underlying issues that are actually causing homelessness, having to do with things like mental health and substance abuse. I think that's hugely important to helping to solve or address this issue. I'm glad that Paso Robles is taking a step forward and doing something like this, a facility like this. I think this is something that's incumbent upon every community. I am kind of like Mark, though, that Commissioner Kogler, in that I'm curious just in terms of it, maybe not tonight necessarily, but another time, just to have an understanding as to the actual scope of what the problem really is in homelessness, because I'm not thinking that 42 units, as much as that is, that's even putting that much of a dent necessarily in the situation. My impression is there's probably hundreds of homeless people living in our community in the rivers and the stream beds around us. So I appreciate the input, and I wish you well.
Okay, I had a couple of questions too, Wendy. What happens to the K-12 kids when we have now while we're having virtual school, but then also when school's back in session? Is there anything that ECHO or the other support organizations can do to help them be consistent in their education?
Yeah, so that's something that, especially seeing the large numbers of kids, we are looking at extending our partnership. Right now, we have a partnership with the County Office of Education, who supports some staffing and some tutoring that we provide at ECHO Atascadero. We're definitely wanting to bring that up to our project in Paso because it's a true need, and a better foundation we give the children will keep the cycle from happening. So that is definitely something to explore. The one piece we're talking through as an organization is right now we're only operating from in the evening to the morning. And what does that look like for a family? So we are hoping to have families have the ability to stay and get things like tutoring, consistent Wi-Fi for homeschool, all of those different pieces. And so we're definitely, one of the things there is expanding staff and finding additional support for that. It could include volunteers as well, but it's really staff to have more oversight during the day. Right now we have case management on site, but they're working on appointments with clients and other duties. So just figuring out where that daytime extra support comes from, but definitely exploring it as an organization and see it as a need.
Okay, thank you. I know it's a complicated one. And then, I don't know, this might be more of a question for Julie. I'm not sure. Let you two decide. But the other local organizations, and I think this is more for meals and feeding than housing, but you had mentioned earlier past collaboration with Paso Cares and also Loaves and Fishes and other organizations. What is still going on with other meal opportunities, even for those who are housed but who are in a potential hunger situation?
So I'll say just an introductory remark about that. When the city was considering reassigning the HEAP grant to HASLO and ECHO and People's Self-Help to support this project at Motel 6, we did put forth an MOU that the groups all entered into with the city. And one of the stipulations in the MOU was to continue a cooperative and collaborative relationship with Paso Cares, the group that has been providing an evening meal for quite some time now. The city had collaborated with Paso Cares to offer property right across the street from the event center that they were utilizing for this evening meal. Truly, ECHO and Paso Cares recognizes the strength in a collaborative relationship. And my understanding is that the meal service is now taking place at the Motel 6 site, or the ECHO Paso Robles, and that Paso Cares volunteers are volunteering with ECHO now to provide those meals. So I can turn that back over to Wendy just to verify that I have the timeline correct on all of that. But the basic message is that these groups are just marvelously collaborative, and we all recognize that working together, we will achieve a lot more than continuing solo efforts. Wendy, you're on mute right now.
You're correct. On February 1st, the program was transitioned over to ECHO so Paso Cares transitioned it to ECHO. It's an ECHO meal program now, run by our staff, but utilizing some of the long-term Paso Cares volunteers. So we have management oversight of the program, and our hopes would be to even expand it because we know there's a large need for meals. And, unfortunately with the pandemic in our county, we've seen that number really go up. So I think it's just, we're just the continuation of all their years of work and just bring it to a new facility and combining it with now resources and avenues out of homelessness and back into housing.
Okay, thank you. And Julie, one more question. What is the most recent guesstimate for homeless residents in Paso Robles?
Well, the most recent count was in 2019, the point-in-time count that occurs countywide every 2 years. And at that time, it was estimated in Paso Robles that there were just over 200 people experiencing homelessness. And even at that, we felt that that number was probably very low. As we all understand, that's a very difficult number to determine. There are those people experiencing homelessness that certainly don't want to be recognized or counted. But that was as you said, our best guess. We'll be coming up on another point in time count here very soon, and I would expect that number to be even greater. So I think it might have been Commissioner Gibson that indicated that this is a significant step forward, but just a step. And we all recognize that homelessness is a complex issue. It's an enormous issue, larger than we probably even realize. And it will take assistance at many levels throughout the community to properly address it. And I'll just join the crowd in thanking Wendy et al. For the amazing effort that you've been able to do. And the timing couldn't have been better. When we closed the Borky campsite, ECHO was already to start offering rooms there at Motel 6. So yes, at least well over 200 homeless in our city of Paso Robles, but likely greater number than that.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Julie. And it's great to see this coming to beginning its success so quickly. I mean, almost instantly. And I love the picture of the kids and the Christmas tree, and that's really great. So thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
This is Commissioner Kogler. If I could, I had just a couple quick follow-ups. I'm curious how many, I realize you haven't been operating very long, but on any given night, or maybe your worst case night, how many people do you actually have to turn away? And do you have a sense of where they go?
Yeah, so I think we've had to turn away some nights between 10 and 15 people. The hardest part of our job is to do that. They tend to either go back to, if they have a car, they're sleeping in their car on the streets somewhere, or if they have come out of an encampment or from the riverbed, they would be going back to that location. The part that as we started this process early on, there was some conversation about, people not coming out of the riverbed and utilizing these services, that they were really choosing that life. And some do, but for the most part, we see that when there is an option and it's the right option, they'll choose that option. So, I recognize that, and I appreciate this conversation that, yes, we're offering 42 rooms and the need is very significant. As Julie mentioned, it's probably in the 300 range of really people in that community that are experiencing homelessness. And one thing, we're bringing some resources in some solution, but ECHO and our organization isn't the solution to homelessness. That's a larger thing to look at, and we're here to help, but we just want the community to know that it can't all fall on us, because that's just a bigger thing than what we're able to accomplish.
Great, thank you. The only comment, Madam Chair, I would have is I would pick up on Commissioner Gibson's point, and also encourage that maybe in the near future we have another discussion. This has been very valuable tonight in understanding this great facility. But I'm wondering if we could have another discussion on kind of the regulatory policy enforcement side of this. this being the homeless issue as a whole. The Planning Commission a few months ago was involved with the approval of an emergency ordinance that dealt with camping in the riverfront and some of those kinds of things. And it would help me, I think, as a person who's in the community, gets questions kind of from a land use perspective of what's going on with certain things. If I had an understanding of how all these pieces fit together, what can one do or not do in the riverfront? Will the camp be operating again based on the experiences of last time around? During either the flood season, how is that dealt with a concern in the riverfront, or fire season? Some of those kind of things I go beyond in a kind of a different genre of points and comments compared to what we heard tonight. So I would request that maybe in the fairly near future, maybe while we have some agenda time, that might be another piece of information that would be helpful for me as I encounter people in the community. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you so much, Wendy and Joy. I appreciate it very much. And congratulations on all that you've accomplished in such a short time.
I appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity to present to you guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we will receive that information and for file, and we will move on to the consent calendar. So we have minutes for 2 DRC meetings, January 25th and February 1st, and 1 Planning Commission meeting, January 26th. Any comments or corrections to any of those minutes? All right, then I will entertain a motion for the approval of the consent calendar.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner
Gibson, I move approval of the Development Review Committee minutes for January 25th, 2021, February 1st, 2021, and the Planning Commission minutes for January 26th, 2021.
All right. Is there
I'll second that.
All right. So moved by Commissioner Gibson, seconded by Commissioner Christensen. Any discussion? All right. May we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Commissioner Christensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Castillo?
Aye.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Kogler?
Aye.
Chairperson Jorgensen?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. And other reports. So Warren?
Yeah, so I think we've talked about reconvening the Housing Constraints and Advisory Committee in 2021, basically to do some oversight on code updates that were identified as part of the housing element update. We're looking at early March for the first meeting for that. So as we get that organized, we'll keep the Planning Commission aware of that. And then Development Review Committee, we have the schedule on there. So it looks like February 22nd, we have Leo. Are you available for that meeting? Commissioner Castillo? So the schedule is in the.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. February 22nd, are you going to make it to DRC?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. So let us know if there's any other conflicts over the next 3 months with the DRC schedule.
All right. Anything else?
Not right yet.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Planning Commissioner comments. Let's go around the backwards way. Commissioner Gibson?
I have no further comments to add tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Christensen?
No, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Commissioner Castillo?
I have no further comments, Madam Chair.
All right. Commissioner Neal?
No comments.
Commissioner Davis?
No comments tonight.
Commissioner Kogler?
No additional comments, Madam Chair.
And I do not have any either. We're a remarkably quiet group tonight. All right, may we have staff comments, please?
Yeah, some updates on a couple items. The city is in the middle of the city manager recruitment process. The city council and a citizen panel did conduct some interviews last week. There's additional second interviews that are scheduled for this week. So we do believe that there'll be an announcement regarding the city manager probably later this month. We're also in the middle of recruitments and interviews for the Planning Commission reappointments. So we have received, I believe, 7 applications for Planning Commission. City Council will be holding a special meeting tomorrow to interview applicants. Commissioner Neal's one of the applicants. The council will be most likely making appointments tomorrow night. So there's 2 seats available for appointments. And then we plan on conducting the reorganization and the seating of the new commissioners by the end of the month so that everybody's ready to go come the 1st of March. Some bigger projects that are moving through this process right now. Justin Winery, they're proposing 2 additional buildings out at their campus on Wisteria. That went through DRC yesterday, so we're getting that ready for Planning Commission. That'll probably be on a March agenda. The boys' school is currently for sale by the state of California. Bids for the property are due next week to the state. The state does expect to move quickly with identifying a buyer for the property in expectation that there is going to be a buyer and application for some sort of reuse of the site. The city has been in the process of recruiting or advertising for an EIR consultant. So we have been doing interviews on that. We hope to be in the position to award an EIR contract in early March for the boys' school project and moving that forward. We continue to see a lot of applications for new kind of commercial brewery, winery related uses, especially in the downtown zone. So that is a positive sign, I think, for the economic recovery. There's still a lot of interest in the downtown area, and we're seeing a lot of applications for various types of infill residential, everything from ADUs to small apartment complexes, especially kind of in the uptown, downtown zone. So I think that's another promising trend that we're seeing. And then your next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 23rd, and that'll conclude staff's comments.
Warren, I have a question for you on the boys' school.
Yes.
Since that is state property, and then the state is selling it to some private entity, does that, how does the ownership of the jurisdiction of the land happen? Does it just automatically go to the city, or do we have to annex it, or how does that work?
So the boys' school has always been within the city limits, or at least since the city annexed the airport decades ago. So the boys' school is in the city limits, and it's currently state property, but once it's transferred to a private property owner, then they'll need to update the zoning and go through the entitlement process before they're really going to be able to utilize the property to its full extent. And that's what we're getting organized and prepared for.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think that concludes our agenda, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Kogler and seconded by Commissioner Davis. And all in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank you.
Meeting
Good
adjourned.
night, everyone. Thank you.